From Bin Laden's porn collection to Unabomber Ted Kaczynski's desire to be a woman, we count down 8 insane facts about historical villains. Number 8. Billy the Kid was almost pardoned. At only 19, Billy the Kid was already known as an outlaw, and by 1878, he wrote a letter to Lew Wallace, the governor of New Mexico, that he didn't want to be on the run any longer. In return, Wallace replied back and said he would give Billy a pardon if he would testify in front of a grand jury about the Lincoln County War. Wanting to be pardoned, Billy turned himself in, but the governor refused to go through with his end of the deal. Somehow, the kid managed to escape jail, and his crime spree continued, and Billy murdered more people while he was being chased by Sheriff Pat Garrett. 129 years after Billy's death, new Governor Bill Richardson announced that he was trying to find the pardon for Billy. Living relatives of both Billy and Lew said that Lew Wallace never intended to give Billy a pardon, but others disagreed. After a lot of consideration, Richardson decided that he wouldn't pardon Billy because there was not enough evidence. Number 7. Osama bin Laden had a porn collection. A large number of pornographic pictures were found in Osama bin Laden's compound after the 2011 raid. At the time of his death, he was 54 and living with 3 wives. The found pornography was a bit surprising considering he often commented on Americans' exploitation of women. He once said that your nation exploits women like consumer products or advertising tools, calling upon customers to purchase them. It's unclear what the contents of the pornography were, and a representative of National Intelligence stated that the materials won't be released due to the content. Number 6. Al Capone opened a soup kitchen. At the time of the Great Depression, many people in America had no shelter and nothing to eat. However, wealthy citizens and churches started soup kitchens to help the poor. Al Capone funded a soup kitchen out of Chicago during the Great Depression, and he also donated to different charities. Back in 1931, the Chicago Tribune claimed that 120,000 meals were served out of Capone's free soup kitchen. Capone even went on to offer jobs to over 5,000 people on Thanksgiving Day in 1930. Most people said that he only created the soup kitchen to give himself a good citizen image. But even after his capture, he kept the soup kitchen open. In the 50s, the building was eventually demolished and turned into a parking lot. Number 5. Kim Jong-il was an opera singer. Before he started running North Korea in 1994, Kim Jong-il was a stage performer. He premiered in the extremely successful 1971 opera Sea of Blood. Jong-il not only appeared in the opera, he also wrote it. He was also trained in music, film, and theater. The opera received great reviews by both Western and Chinese critics. Years later, when Kim Jong-il was leaving the country, critics asked the stars of the play about their success, and they replied by saying, "We took the guidance and suggestions of our dear leader." Number 4. Ted Kaczynski wanted to be a woman. The Unabomber, also known as Ted Kaczynski, is now in prison for the rest of his life, but when he roamed the streets as a free man, he was a danger to society for years. According to Kaczynski, he decided to attack people after a visit with his psychiatrist when he was contemplating whether or not to have a sex change operation. He had been having issues with gender identity for quite some time along with other mental issues. Instead of telling his psychiatrist about his issues, he chose to isolate himself from everyone and slowly began to unravel. He then decided to get his message to people by building a bomb. Number 3. Saddam Hussein was a novelist. Hussein was one of the most sadistic dictators in history, but he was also known as a novelist to some of his people. In 2000, his first book was published. It was called Zabiba and the King, and it became an instant bestseller in Iraq. When he first wrote the book, he wrote it anonymously, and he wrote it as a metaphor for an Iraqi king, Hussein, a romance with a woman, the people, and a war with a vicious man, the United States. Zabiba and the King consisted of romance, bestiality, and politics, and the CIA believed at the time that it was ghost-written. Hussein wrote and published 2 more books before he went into hiding. Even after he lost total control of Iraq, he wrote 1 more novel. Number 2. Jeffrey Dahmer may have found salvation. Dahmer was one of the most terrifying serial killers in America, but his life took a significant turn after he went to jail. During the months leading up to his death in 1994, he became interested in finding salvation. It's unclear if his intentions were real or not, but Kurt Booth, the prison priest, was under the impression that Dahmer was sincere. Booth spent a lot of his time with the locked-up serial killer and said Dahmer had extreme guilt and regret for his crimes and wanted to take a Bible course. Dahmer finished the course and was baptized and continued to take more religious courses up until his murder. And number 1, Fidel Castro wasn't really anti-drugs. Fidel Castro often talked about being against the drugs in Cuba, but the reality was he knew that drugs brought in a substantial amount of money in his country. Throughout the 80s, quite a few of the Soviet countries that supported this country struggled, so Castro agreed to let Cuba be used to move drugs into America. Castro would then distribute the cocaine to the United States and use the profits to keep Cuba on an even ground financially. The CIA discovered that the Cuban prime minister was accepting cocaine as payment for smuggled weapons to Colombian guerrillas, but he denied his involvement.